Hello and welcome. I'm Lala Rimanto for Talk Thursday. We're with President Benigno Aquino. Hi, sir. Thank you for having us. We've had different good news about the Philippine economy, good forecasts of where we're headed. But what's your favorite economic indicator?
Siyempre, it's the GDP growth. No? Especially when they tell me that they erred on the wrong side, on the lower side. We're projected to have a GDP growth this year of between 5 to 6%. Okay, the first semester is 6.1. You have most of the tourist income coming in the second half. A lot of those that were started are coming online right now. So, in fact, the second quarter results we think might be revised. But I'm cautioned to say up to what level. So we'll have to await exactly when they announce it, which will hopefully be by next month. But we are very confident that the 5 to 6% growth target will be met, especially in the context of the global economy.
Yes, which is a lot of groups have said that we have a good path ahead of us.
One time I was meeting with the European leader, and he asked me to talk about our economy. I mentioned that at that time we hadn't revised the GDP growth for the first quarter, which was pegged at 6.4. And theirs was point blank na lang. No? Because if I tell you the number, you can guess which country it is. And he actually paused before he made the comment after I finished talking about our economy. And I could sympathize with him because, of course, there are more advanced economies, but the economy is still the issue for so many countries, if not all countries at this point in time. So, in a sense, I didn't want to sound gloating, but I think it was really an achievement for our part. And I tempered it with saying that, of course, a big portion of this is the investments that your country is bringing to our country.
And in fact, one of the issues that the investors are looking at is our fiscal health, specifically how we're doing on the revenue measures, on sin taxes. We've just had some drama in the Senate with the sin taxes, and it's a measure that your administration has focused on from the start. What are your next moves now, considering that the end of the 2013 elections is coming, and you've been wanting to have that passed before the elections?
We're reasonably confident that it will pass. No? There is an agreement in the degree of taxes. Some of the details are still being worked on, what the target should be, whether it's about 15 billion, 40 billion, 60 billion. In fact, this afternoon, Secretary of Finance, Secretary of Health, and the BIR Commissioner are meeting with the senators precisely to restate the executive's position with regards to the sin taxes. But the bottom line is, we gain a lot in terms of revenue, directed primarily to the health concerns, and tries to, what's the phrase? Try to discourage people from imbibing in these sin products.
And what do you think would happen if we'll have a bill that will add revenues that are not as much as 15 or 60 billion that you've looked for?
I will be very disappointed if it stays at 15. It should be a lot more than that. And I think we have very good advocates in both the House and in the Senate to be able to reach between 30 and 40 at least for both products.
I'm just curious. Were there any communications between you and Senator Recto after the committee report was released?
Before the committee report. But after, we haven't. He just sends word via text to explain exactly why he did what. Giving up the chairmanship of the Committee on Ways and Means.
Let's move on to another contentious issue, mining. Do you like mining?
In the sense that it will add job opportunities, add the revenues, yes. No? But it is not the same investment, let's say, as somebody putting up an electronics manufacturing concern in the country. It's not the same as improving the agricultural sector. In extraction is a one-shot deal with attendant risk and very severe risks at that. And at the same time, in terms of the revenues that generated, their internal revenues, we get less than 10%. So our people seem to be getting the maximum of the risk, but the least in terms of benefits. And we want to correct that situation.
Regarding the mining policy and the IRR, there were flip-flops there. What happened?
Flip-flops, I'm not sure if it's flip-flopping or more refinement. No? Certain stakeholders felt that there was some ambiguity. And we wanted to remove any ambiguity and make it as clear as possible. Therefore, we refined, I think, about 3 sections of the EO, no? Precisely to correct the ambiguities and make the position of this government very clear with regards to mining.
When the mining industry threatened to sue the government because of some legal issues in the provisions, how did you feel about it?
If I remember my civics classes before, you cannot sue government unless government agrees to be sued, number one. But more importantly, siguro, that is their right. No? If they feel that their rights as individuals are being trampled upon, the courts are there, and if we were in error, then we will correct. But at the end of the day, we think that the vast majority of our populace is not involved in mining, but is also at risk, especially in all the mining areas. So the interests of the majority, no, if not the entire populace, should be the primary consideration, which I've often stated, rather than any specific sector.
Okay. We attended the mining industry conference, and one of the sentiments that kept on cropping up was that the mining policy tried to address the concerns of a lot of most of the stakeholders, but it ended up not fulfilling that.
The feedback I got was that everybody was relatively pleased with the outcome of the EO. Actually, the comment that I was most perplexed with were the 2 diametrically opposed camps were confident that they had gotten everything that they wanted. So when they were debating, they seemed to be in mutually exclusive zones. And the final product made both of them happy. I think, well, the committee that we set up really excelled at getting both sides to feel that they got everything that they wanted, which should have been exclusive or the opposite of what the other party said. But both parties said that they are very happy with the results.
Okay. Because we've also seen one-page ads in the newspapers.
Specifically on the EO, the IRR. Specifically on the IRR.
On the IRR, okay. Some of the sentiments there were against Environment Secretary Pahe, calling him names. Yes. Okay. And then you called a meeting in Malacanang to make sure that stakeholders got into and addressed the issues that were raised.
Again, refinement of the language. I started out that meeting by saying, do we agree on the following premises? And there was consensus. Okay. Then, the IRR conformed to what we have agreed on in the consensus. They said, this can be misconstrued as, this can be... So, in my presence, they re-edited the IRR precisely to more adequately cover the consensus points. And that resulted in the 3 sections being modified.
Let's move on to infrastructure. I remember your first SONA where you talked about public-private partnership very passionately and the ongoing, the projects that were lined up for that. We haven't seen any of those infrastructure projects start construction. And the biggest one, the LRT1 Cavite, extension to Cavite, is not going to start construction until 2014.
We're in the stage of bidding. I understand that, well, not yet bidding, but those who have secured the bid documents number about 30 or a little more than 30. No? So indicates the interest. If I may just remind you, I perhaps started off on the wrong premise. No? One of the numbers that confronted me was a budget of 325 billion. And this was told to me siguro mga second week of July, before the SONA actually. So, and at the same time, the need of all the needs, need for infrastructure, need for the health, need for defense, need for etc. So how does one propose to fund all of this necessary infrastructure? So doing it in a purely PPP fashion it presents a choice where if you have no other means of effecting that particular project, then you will have to bear certain privileges that you grant the proponent, no, to get to entice him to do it. Or the project in turn becomes a little bit more expensive, or sometimes a bit more expensive because you had no other choice. In the power plant PPA, no, is a case in point. So we were pleasantly surprised that towards at least the start of the fourth quarter of 2010, no, you had the stock market really breaking records. You had so much activity from all the so-called business groups, DIPADs. You had improvements. You had improvements in tax administration, but more importantly, there are so many loopholes that were plugged. One of the latest that came to my attention was yung Araneta underpass. It was originally budgeted at over 600 million. They corrected the estimates. They bid it out at 500 something, and it actually came in at 400 something. So it's 2/3 of the initial estimate, no? Which means that there's a third that you can now reallocate to other endeavors. So my economic team tells me that the awarding of I think it's the Anghari, SLEX, was a lot faster than all other PPP projects of any government preceding us. And they're confident that the 8 is on track and will meet the criteria of being the fastest bidded out for all of this. But again, let me state, we had a change of parameters that led to the delays of the PPP program. Parang government can borrow at concessional rates, whereas the private sector cannot. That in turn will increase the cost of the infrastructure we need, and made no logic just to support the previous statement to increase the burden on the people.
Okay, so there were changes from the
time that we started to, yeah.
But at the end of your administration, name at least 2 major infrastructure projects that you want already finished.
In fact, today or yesterday, I reminded Secretary Purisima, incoming Secretary Abaya, to a degree Secretary Ross, outgoing DOTC, yung NLEX, SLEX connector, no, is something that I want to inaugurate and to drive on while I'm still president. And of course, the others in the airports. No? We're projecting almost more than a 3-fold increase